Hello all, little people. So, in continuation to our AI series, I didn't wanted to record this, but if you are interested in setting up how I clean up that function as I said in the last video, and how we kind of extend to use both the models. If you are interested looking into that, we'll talk about that. This is not about the scenario that I was talking about. That'll be the next video in this series. So today what I'm going to do in general is trying to utilize all the parameters that we have defined in this table into a code unit, as well as to kind of clean this code unit up so that we can reuse it in other scenarios. If you are not interested, that's okay. I'll see you in another video. Otherwise, let's stick back and we'll try to do things as we promised. Okay, so first, let's try to make this a little bit easier to read because it's a little bit complex at this point. The first part is we are setting up this body. Should we move this body to a separate method? I guess that'll be good, right? So that if we have to add something else, we can do that. So let's extract this to a procedure, and the procedure name is, let's say, set chat GPT body. Okay. Now this set chat GPT body currently passing input, OpenAI setup, and context text. Maybe let's move this line to another method. Just this line. I don't like to call it everywhere else. Or make it global, right? So what I'll do is I'll change this to be a global variable. So let's switch this here so that we can refer it anywhere in the code unit, right? So this becomes global. And now OpenAI setup, we'll get it here. We'll do the content clear here. And in the set body, what is actually happening is it is writing to the context text, right? So if I just pass the context text into it, what I'm passing right now, the OpenAI setup, which I don't need because now it's a global, so that's easy. So I can remove this part and let me pass the context text because that's getting set here, and I don't need input as well. So let's just keep this as it is. Input is what gets into the prompt, and the content is which gets sets here. So this method then just returns me the content text. Okay, that's being done. Now the other thing that we have to do is we have this method which is doing the header part. Okay, header clear, doing this, and that's it on the header. So let's make this as another method here. Okay, and we'll call it as set ChatGPT header. Okay, so this will set up my header for my ChatGPT, where headers is just used here, so it just pass it here. Content makes sense because that's at the end of it. It kind of get passed to the content, and then the request message is here. Okay, so this looks nice. The header method, the body method, and then this becomes the parsing of response. So let me change the name. Parse ChatGPT response text. Okay, and I'll move it at the end so that I don't get confused about it. It's being deferred. Okay. This have all, it just gets the string and returns whatever the value that we have learned in the last video. Okay. Now here it where it calls the, or where it sets the request message. Okay. It's passing the request message there. So I can actually move these three lines also into my header method. So let me go into my header method, and once this is done, I can just set this up here. Alright. With this being said, This will set up my this, and this is set up my this, and this is defines the method. So our method, the main method, kind of looks a little bit more cleaner in this sense at this point. Okay. And then this is the call, and the call, if it happens, it reads out string, and if the response message the success code, then it passes it to the outer string, which gets the response. So from anywhere, if I call this will do the bit that I need. And the only global method in this is this, which is my request message, which is used here, and the response message, and the context text, and the output string. Okay, I can also move it here. Okay, that was just a basic cleanup of it. But now let's talk about where we ended our last discussion. And let me open my Business Central and open AI setup. That we have defined so many parameters in this area. If you notice, we have the method, and that's where we left it last time. And then we also have all these parameters. We have only used some of them, but let's start utilizing all of these in the body so that you don't have to change that method all the time. So let's see what we have into the body. In the body, right now we are setting up the model, which is the first thing. Okay. Then we are setting up the max token, which is here. We are setting up the temperature, and this was the minimum set that we needed, right? Now let's try to define other parameters that we have, so that you don't have to come here every time and utilize this. OpenAI setup dot, let's see, what's the dot look like? Toppy. Okay, and we'll go back into documentation and understand how we need to define this. So I'll just copy this as it is, and we'll assign them in a while. After the toppy, we have presence penalty. So let's set this up. Okay, presence penalty, and then we also have the frequency penalty. Let's set that up. Dot frequency penalty. Anything else? We have best of. So let's do the last one, which is best of. Okay, so define all the parameters that we have defined on the setup, but we don't know what are the texts for it. And for that, what we'll do is we'll go back into our documentation, and we'll try to understand how to define these. Okay, so let's see. What you are looking for first is the toppy. So let's look at the toppy. Toppy is defined like this. So let's copy this. And if you don't know what are these parameters, go ahead and watch the first one in the series. Presence penalty is here. Okay. Frequency penalty is defined something like this. So I'm just copying and pasting things from here and there. And best of, let's set that up. Toppy, and there's nothing best of. Okay, this is how you define the best of. Okay, now what the best of gives us, it gives us the number of compilation, the best, which is the highest probability per token result cannot be streamed. So when you define the n, it defaults to 1 if you don't define it, but otherwise it returns you as many responses. So if there's a situation where you want to return 2 output of it, then you can define best of 2, and so on and so forth. And you can read about this, what the frequency penalty is, which is between -2 and 2. Positive value penalize the new token based on their existing frequency and decreasing the model likelihood to repeat the same line verbatim. So if you are calling the same method more than one time, it'll remember that it should not try to fetch the same response every time. And then this talks about the new topic about the penalty. Okay, so we have defined all of these, which are the parameters here. On the header we have defined everything, but then if you remember last time when we were testing it, we end up in one confusion around what is our this URL. One is this, and then when you come down here, you see the, let me see, where is the new one? Okay, let's go up. There are two different URLs based on the model that you use. If you are using the new model, then you use a different URL, and if you are using the old model, then you use a different URL. Okay, so we need to define which model we are using, and based on that model we need to change our URL. Now the only catch here in case of the code that we are trying to write is that the model is defined in the body, but the URL is defined in the header. So what we'll have to do here is, let's not do a pop-up, but let's add one more parameter into it, which is new model. And maybe going forward you don't need this, but right now I'm using it because that's available. And if this new model is set to true, then we call the new one, otherwise we call the old one. So the value of this will be passed to my body as well as to my header. Okay, and the new model boolean then goes into my body. Where is that? Yeah, and then it also goes into my header. Okay, that hopefully solves the problem. Okay, now if it is new model, then I need to change my URL. If new model, then let's see what is the request URI for new model. So when it is new model, where is the new model? This is the new model. Now how I know this is the new model is when you go here into the model and open this compatibility, you will see that there are two models available. One is the v1 compilation, which is the legacy, the old model, and this is the new model. So if I'm using the new one, which means I'll use the model property in the page, in the setup that I've defined, which is this. These are the options for the new model. If you look at it here, GPT-4, GPT this and this and this. So if I'm using the new model, my calling or the set request URI will be this rather than this. So I'll have to add additional word called chat into it. So let's go back into here, and where is my code? Here. So if new model and then else, this is Control Z. Okay, let's do else, which means it's an old model. But if it is a new model, then I'll just have to paste this here and utilize or change the URL and add the word chat after v1. Okay, so let's add that. So if new model, then it uses the new chat model, which is here. If it is the old model, then it just uses the v1 compilation. In the same way, I'll just have to change something also on the header, which is the model property here. If new model, then do something else, otherwise add this. Okay, so in this new model, which one we want to use? We want to use the model property, not the model legacy. So what I'll do is I'll change this to be model. Okay, the new model use the model, the old model use the model legacy, and that's how it kind of becomes a little bit generic, right? Now from a user standpoint, because I've changed the calling method here, I can do add two actions actually. So let's change this and let's call this as execute old LPL and change it as execute old. And this is, I'm just doing it for your understanding and your use cases. And then this one becomes the new level. So what I'll do is here where it is giving error, this will be old. So let me change this one to new. I'll define both and I'll copy this again and paste it here again. Okay, now this becomes new LBL and this becomes new LBL. Okay, and then this becomes true and then this becomes false. So now we can test out both the situation. What happens when we try with the old model and what happens when we try with the new model. Hopefully with these changes, you understand what I'm trying to do. So I'm just trying to make it a little bit more generic based on the need that we have and then trying to see how it reacts in Business Central. So I have it here. Let's publish this. Okay. Now this works. That kind of we have made this function a little bit more generic so that I can actually utilize it for doing different things based on whatever use cases you have. And now I can define these parameters and then based on whatever the settings that I have set up, it'll react to different situation differently. Okay, so let's search for this. Now making it generic also makes it possible that you can then reutilize the same setup and you don't have to every time go and define these different parameters. You can just do it based on your need. So here I am on OpenAI setup and now let's ask the same question. What is Business Central? Okay. Let's execute the old one. See, does it execute? Yes, and it gives me a reply stating that Business Central is this and this is what. Okay, let's try doing execute new. Okay, it seems giving the same reply. And let's ask this use of sales and receivables setup in Business Central. Okay, this one we'll try with the new one, and the new one doesn't seem to be working for some reason. It doesn't execute the new one, and I have selected, maybe let me do 3.5 turbo. No. Does the old one works? Old one does work and it shows me why sales and receivable setup is worked, but the new one kind of fails with this. And maybe it's a license issue. I'll have to figure that out if that's a license issue, but it should actually work from that perspective. It doesn't seem to kind of execute that. So let's go back into code and see, are we missing something else? Maybe we are, I don't know. So when you said new one, let me go back to our documentation so that we can read it. Okay. So here is the chat one. It says HTTP OpenAPI chat compilations. And hopefully that's what we have said. In the header, HTTPS api.openai.com/vun/chat/compilations. The header, rest of the header remains same, which is the content type as application JSON and the bearer and my key. In the model we are selecting here based on the model property, and we're setting up the prompt. Do I need to send a message is my question. Maybe the body is a little bit different here. If you look at it, if you compare this body with the new body or the old body that we have, is a little bit different, because here you see that in the detail you can actually directly pass these parameters: model, prompt, max token, and temperature. When we look at the new one, which is here, you kind of pass model in the same way, but your message is where you contain the help, and you can pass multiple messages, and the response that you get is hello there, how I'm assist you. And this is maybe the response from the first one: you are a helpful assistant. And that's what the question is. And the second question is hello, and the response for this is a little bit trickier. It's not as straightforward as it should be. So the choices, the index is 0, the message, but then there is a content that instead of being a role. So it's a little bit different, I guess. How you pass that, you have to pass the message, and then inside that you can pass other parameters. Let me see what happens when we change this. So the only thing that's changing is this, and that's what how we talk to it. This is my endpoint. The header remains same. In the detail, I guess I'll have to tweak how I'm passing the message. And if I can do that, where I can pass the role and the content, and then why it is passing two messages: you are a helpful assistant and hello. The response that's being received is just one single response, which is here: hello there, and how may I assist you today? And this is typically the reply. So maybe for the new model, I'll have to pass a different kind of body rather than just changing the header. So let's give it a try. Let's see how it works, and then we'll act it accordingly. Okay. So I never thought we'll reach to this point where we'll try to do something new, but it seems we'll have to do it. So let's do that. Let's go back to the documentation and let's try to understand what we need to do. So when we are on the new model, which is this one, I guess our body structure changes a little bit. Instead of just passing these parameters directly, I think we'll have to create an array of messages that we want to pass, and then we need to pass our prompt in the content. Now this will give us the response. Now let's see what the parameters are here. Model, we are defining it, no problems. Message, it's an array and it's required, so I need to define the message. But before we do that, let me bring up one important point: is why when I'm doing this, it's not giving me an error message. We did try that, and it should give me an error message, right? So let's publish this again and let's see. Because my point is, if it is not responding, it should give me an error to the similar question that I'm asking again. And if it doesn't can get us an error message, there's something wrong that's happening. So that's a good discovery of trying to identify what's going wrong and then trying to fix it for the better purposes. So if I add it here, try execute, no, I don't get a message or an error stating something, which means okay, here on this method somewhere it is not giving a success, and that's why it's not going into it. So maybe we need to define an else case, and let's do that. If it is not a successful scenario, then message out or error out. It should be an error in that case, not message. Error out. What? Let's try to set that up. My output string which is a text, right? So I should be able to see something as a valid error when I'm doing this. So if things are not working, it should give me an error message at that point. So let me copy that question again, and we'll see what's happening and what is the error message. Hopefully that's based on the syntax change between the old and the new model. That is what should be the error, but let's have a look. Okay, let me ask the question to execute new, and here is the error message, which is nice that we have an error message. That means we were correct at that point. It says that the message is required, type request error, parameter null, code null. So that means I need to set up the body a little bit different than I was doing in the old model, and that should solve my problem. So let's come back to our body discussion that we were having. So we need to pass a message which is an array, which means that it can have multiple values if you need. And then inside there's the show properties. Let's get into it. You need to define a role, which can be a system, user, assistant, or function. It can be anything. And the content is the question that you're asking. The name is optional, the name of the author of the message, and name is required if role is function. So if you are not using function as role, then you don't need the name. And it should name the function whose response is in the content. Okay, and function call. So let's play minimum. In the function call, name is required if you define the function call. So we are going to go with the system and see what happens. Okay, what else? Function call, we are not doing that. Temperature, we have all these properties, top one, and all these are option. So let's try to set up the body in that way. And for that, let's keep the reference of this because we'll be needing this for creation. Okay, so let me put it somewhere here. Okay, let me put it as comment so that we can refer it while writing code and we don't have to switch the screens every time. Now if the new model, then the body will be created differently. If the old model, so let me just keep this method for old model because it's the part of the array, so I can just add it in there. Okay, I'll have to convert that to text in any case, so I'll leave that as it is. Here I need to define something which will define my array. Now the way you define array in this word is a little bit different, so let's have a look into it. Now I did a very old session about JSON object. If you're not aware about it, I'm not going into details of it, but when I have to add an array, if you look at it here, I can just simply pass not like this, and say give me the array. What is the array called? The array is called messages. So let's ask for an array, and then if you remember, the add have multiple overload. One of them is value, the other is JSON object, JSON value, JSON array. So I'm going to utilize this overload of it, and what that node will be called is message, and I'll get the message out of it. So I'll say get message array, and I'll need to pass the input because that's what kind of need to be added into it. Hopefully, new model not needed, content is not needed. Okay. So this method should return me an array at this point. Let me do the begin end. That's needed. Okay. So at this point, this should return me an array. So get ChatGPT message array, and let's create that method. Okay, here it is. I'll place it nearby so that's easier for me to kind of go back and navigate to things. So here it is. Now this by default says JSON token, but what I want to return from it is JSON array. And here I'll give it a name, which is, let's say, input array. Okay. So we'll set this and then we'll return this. As simple as that. Now to add something into the array, I also need to define an object, because if you look at it, inside the array there's again a JSON object, and there are two in this case, but I'm going to define the minimum one, which is one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to define a input JSON object of type JSON object, and then inside this I'm going to say input JSON object dot add, as we were doing earlier, and then we'll add the details that are needed. One is role. Okay, so I'll pass it as role, and then the value of this key, it would be system, let's say. We'll hard code that value. Okay, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the other important thing into it, which is my content. And my content is the question that I'm asking, which comes from this input. Okay, so far so good. Now I also would need, hopefully, to add these parameters here. Model we have defined, so no problems. Prompt we are passing on the content, so that's not a problem. Let's copy all this and let's paste it in here, hopefully, and let's just replace these. So once this object is defined, my JSON object, now what I can do is I can add this object into my array. So what I can do here at the end is say input array dot add, and then add the input JSON object. That'll make this object a part of the array. So what I'm going to do, what this function is going to do is create this and then return it here so that the message is being created. Hopefully that should do the magic. Let's remove this. Let's save this. And we have everything correct at this point. So let's try to publish this and see what happens. Okay, I was not planning this. Sorry guys, if it is getting late on this one. But that was not the plan. I thought it would be as straightforward as just setting this up. But we had a new discovery and we are playing with it. So I'll ask the same question this time. Okay. And I'll then expect that output to be there once I call that method. Okay, so let's paste it here. Let's execute new. There's an error saying additional properties are not allowed. Okay, so all these additional properties seems to be for legacy. Now I'm a little bit confused because the documentation still says, if I look at it, the new one, that I can still define my top P and others. Is there a separate section for it? I don't know. Or should I just define it outside it? Maybe that's the thing. And let's give it a try. So let's OK this. Let's come here. And instead of defining it into the array, I'll just remove all this. Okay. This will give me the array. And then when the array is being called here, I'll just only do these two things in the new one till prompt. Okay, and rest I'll add in both. Hopefully that will make sense. If not, then we'll change something else. But hopefully this should make sense. That I'm not adding it into the array, but I'm just keeping it outside the array, so that the system should be able to understand those properties and utilize them. Otherwise the error was that I cannot set additional properties, which was a little bit weird, but let's see what happens now. unrecognized request argument supplied best of type invalid request error. Okay, so at this point, without wasting further time, I think I'm coming to a conclusion that I can only use these properties in the legacy model. I cannot use these properties in the new model. In the new model, I just need to pass the message and that'll do the magic, hopefully. So let's publish the last time, I guess, and we'll see how it behaves. Hopefully this time I get a response. Let's see. Okay, so that's a little bit confusing why all these properties are defined in both the models when the new one does not support it. Doing something this time. No error still now. Okay. Come on. Give me output here. I'm expecting one. It's doing something. It's taking some time. Which is, there is no property with type text key into the JSON object. What is the text? Let's search it here. Did I do something text? Okay, wait. There is a get for the text. So that means the response is also a little bit different. So let's go into the documentation and maybe this is the last thing. So it did parse the query and is trying to respond it. But when the response of this comes in, let's have a look. It also comes in a different way. There is a choice which we are utilizing. Inside the choice, and let me copy this. Where is the choice ending? Here. Okay, so let me copy this here so that we don't keep on running between the screens. Okay. So what's happening is, let's try to read this here. I'm trying to get the choices, so I'll get the choice. Inside the choice array, I get the index 0, which I'm getting here. So that's good. But inside this, there is a sub object, JSON object, and inside that there's a content, which is not text. In the older style it was text, in the newer style it is not text. So maybe I'll also have to pass that in here, which is my new model. Okay. Now what the new model does, it changes how I parse my response. Okay. So till here, I think everything is good. Well, it gets it and it converts it to an object. And now if it is new model, then it's need to do something else. Otherwise, it just need to get the text and respond it. So what happens when it is a new model? In the new model, I would like to get the message. So what I'll do is I'll do a JSON choice.get. Let's take it as it is, bottom, and then change this to be message. I'm trying to get the message out of it. And then let's not use this, let's use the earlier one which you have done. The choice is also a token and this is also a token. So let's do this. Okay. Now I get this. Now I need to convert this token into an object. So let's do that. JSON choice is equal to JSON token choice dot as object. Now once it gets converted into object, I can do a blind get, not a blind but eventually a get, into something called as content. Once I get the content here, the content will get into response text, which will then be returned. So first we'll have to get the message, convert the response as an object, so I get this as an object, and then I get the content, and whatever the things are, I'll get it here. So let's clear this and let's try this again. Okay, let's do Control F5. Let's go back. Let's ask the same question. And we'll see the difference between the old and the new style of the model, and how different model differentiate what kind of output we get for the similar kind of results, which will be a pretty interesting one, because the legacy model is going away, as we learned in the last video. I guess it's going away somewhere in January next year. So let's do this. If everything goes good, hopefully I should get an output at this point. Come on. It's doing something. Let's wait for it. Okay, working on it. It's taking a little bit more time than the old one. The old one kind of runs faster. But there would be reason why. Oh, so I got a response. And the response is, sales and receivable settlement business central is used to do this, and here is this, and it gives me details. What if I use the old one and it gives me bullets? And I didn't define majority of the things, but it does give me all the details about it. Nice. If I do the old one with the same question, I get a reply which is not that fine-grained as the new one. Now, the new one is actually defined on this model. So I can do the ChatGPT 4, which will get the new model. And here is an error. I don't have access to it because of, I guess because I don't have the subscription available right now. But let me try something else. Does not exist, or you don't have access to it. Okay, maybe I just need to limit myself to 3.5. Let's try the turbo one. Okay. Now this is running. Come on. Okay. It takes a little bit extra time than the previous one, the old one, which doesn't kind of sounds pretty good, but that's okay. I guess in some cases it's okay where it takes time but gives you a great output, right? So it depends on what kind of output you need, and then based on the output that you need, how it kind of travels that data. So it's a pretty smart one, the new model, than the old one for sure, because it kind of understand the output that you need and give you a better output than the previous one that it was giving. The only change that we made is pretty simple, and let me quickly walk you through around it before we end this. So what we did, if you remember, we just passed a new model here everywhere, but that was done for a different purpose to begin with. But when we go into the body, if it's a new model, we have to build an array for this, and the array have certain pre-defined stuff. Like you need to define a role. There are 2-3 options about it, and then the content will contain your input. That was the first change that we did in the body. We need to remember that none of these additional parameters are required if you're using the new model, which is required in the old model. And then in the header, you just need to change the URL as we did. The new URL is a little bit different than the old one. And in the parsing of the response, because the structure of the output is a little bit different, you have to tweak a little bit how you get the response out of it. So the idea of today's video was to simplify this, but surprisingly, I did learn something new around models and how you process the new model, which is very interesting. What I would request you to kind of go through is don't look at the initial comment that I started this video from. That only look at if you just want to see how I organize this. But I would be happy if people look at it, and this is the new model thing, which I never thought would be that complex, but which is okay, as in you learn something new every day when you're trying to try something new, which is something that you haven't tried till now. So if you like the content, hit the like button. Let me know into the comment section, do you like the legacy model or the new model? And then we'll utilize that into the upcoming video. If you think that the new model understanding will help your friends and colleagues, do share this video on your social media. And please, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, do hit that subscribe button. It helps you to understand whenever the new videos posted into this channel, and it helps us to understand how we are doing and what kind of content people are liking. Should I go back into writing stuff, or should I continue recording these videos? So that all happens when you hit that subscribe button. So please do that, and I'll see you tomorrow on the next video in the series. Maybe more or less a final or the last video in the series, but I have some other plans around AI, so we'll keep talking about this stuff in future. Thank you. Have a great day.